Hi, everybody. Hi. Am I
Hi, Ojas.
visible and am I audible?
Yeah, perfect. Before we begin the session, I just
All
want
of you
everyone
have
to
like
know.
these wonderful backgrounds
Yeah,
to match the event. I don't, but I think
absolutely.
that'll be all right. I have a very theatrical background.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, so we will be recording these sessions. Just wanted everyone to know if you have questions for Ojas or Swayam, feel free to drop it in the chat. Swayam, I'll hand it over to you to introduce yourself and our speaker for today. Thank you, everyone.
Sure. Thank you, Chadali. Hello, Ojas. Welcome
Hi,
to
hi,
the
Swayam. Hi, how are you?
conference
Thank you.
and to the panel, Entertainment Careers Beyond Bollywood. We are all really looking forward, by the way. I mean,
Likewise.
I've gotten a lot of messages saying, that this is one of the highlighted sort of panels of the entire conference because you're a rock star. So, Ojas, okay, so the way in which we'll do this is we'll do this informally. So we can have a chat
Yeah.
for about 45, 50 minutes or so, and then see if there are questions in the audience. But let me just introduce myself and then introduce our guest speaker. So I am Swayam Bagaria. I teach at University of Virginia. I got my PhD in anthropology last year, and I work on something a bit unrelated. I work on the economics of religion, but I have dabbled on writing on avant-garde cinema in India or experimental cinema. So I hope some of that, will provide me with a channel into having this conversation with you, Ojas. Ojas is an amazing, popular actor, comedian in India. He has worked a lot in regional cinema and also in mainstream Bollywood. Some of his works include Lady Special, Ventilator, Made in China, Wagle Ki Dubiya. But even, sort of besides this dry as dust biography, I did some snooping around on Instagram and YouTube. And I realized, so Ojas trained as a doctor. At some point,
Yeah.
he was interested in plant medicine.
It's true.
He has worked as an assistant to Kundan Shah. So again, I mean, he is an educator too. He's a stand-up comedian. So let me begin with this, Ojas. How does a person become so multidimensional? What happened? How can you maybe speak about your trajectory a little bit? You started off as being a doctor or training
Yeah.
to become a doctor,
Yeah.
and now I don't know if you still practice, but it doesn't look like that is the main thing that you do.
I do not. But first of all, before we begin, um, a very good morning, good evening, or a good afternoon to whoever is joining from wherever. As Swam very wonderfully put, we don't really, if this is the last session, then from your side, I don't know, but especially from my side, I don't think there's anything else keeping me after this. It's 10:56 p.m. here, which is perfectly fine. I've shot for the day. I'm done shooting, and I don't have an early call time tomorrow, so I can talk and answer those questions as well, which may come in a little later on outside of this. Sometimes questions spring up mid conversation. So that's that. And first and foremost, my fond respects to my very dear friend Mirav from way back when all of this started, especially when you talk of plant medicine. But to Mirav, who is, I think, the poster child, and I've given her example to very many students over the years, to teachers and to parents, of how it is important in today's day and age to be a global citizen. And I think she defines that and has also inculcated the same spirit in the students. So to all those students, to all those educators who've joined, oh, to all the educators and to all these students, I've been in both those roles, as a student and as an adjunct professor earlier in the United States before I came back. But let us just quickly go back, and in this as Swam correctly said, this is going to be a conversation, and that is what Chaitali briefed me as well, and she's been following up with me more than my mother has been following up for me to get married, and she's been far more persuasive in her conversations, and so this has been accomplished. The marriage, I don't know, but thank you, Chaitali, for keeping up with the crazy time schedules and also accommodating me in this time frame, because earlier we were supposed to do this. Yep, yeah, Chaitali. Earlier we were supposed to do this today morning. So I would possibly have been just like putting some makeup on, getting costume, and there's like, okay, yeah, I'll be there. Yeah, what's yeah. So let's get to the last question, yeah, quickly, yeah, because my shot's ready. So I didn't want to do that, and I wanted to have a very wholesome, comprehensive conversation, and which is why I decided to suggest that if we could move the time, that would be very nice. So thank you, Chaitali, for accommodating me. To begin with the journey so far, it's been a very crazy, a very unconventional journey, but that's what kind of it was all through school and college. As Swayam correctly put, how is it possible to do it multidimensional? I think I was all along. It was always the phrase is, the idiom goes, "Jack of all trades, master of none." And I think I tweaked it a little bit to "Jack of all trades and master of some." And in today's day and age, when it's interdisciplinary, it's kind of required. But even back in the 90s or the early 80s, when I was in school or college, or even university days, I was involved in more than one thing. I mean, blessed are those who just have a single focus and they can see the target, or as they can see the eye of the fish, for those who remember the Mahabharata. But if I'm good for them if they just know, like, this is exactly what I want to do, as opposed to me, who was also involved in debate, elocution, oration, poetry, all through school and college. In fact, the college right behind these curtains is my junior college, which is the higher grades, the 11th and the 12th grade in India. And I came from a very extremely padhaku college. It was extremely academic. They didn't really have a whole lot of, especially the science streams, didn't really have a whole lot of entertainment. So we started something known as the annual festival for the arts. I was like, well, the bunch of us got together, and that they said, well, this is the science forum, and we would also like to showcase the art that we have. And it started, and it still continues year after year after year, where they come and do dance, songs, musical instruments, fashion, so on and so forth, and also stand-up. That's in fact my very first ever stand-up performance that I ever gave, was a 5-minute bit that I did. But then came a time where in 2002, 2003, when I had to go to the United States to pursue higher education. And I went there with a lot of help from Education USA. They have a center here in Mumbai, and which is USIEF now, which was USEFI earlier, but now it's USIEF. And with the help of these people, I narrowed down a particular university. I narrowed down the state that I wanted to be. And that was very clear, actually. I didn't want to shovel snow, and I couldn't wait for my car to heat up. So I picked Florida. And so then I narrowed it down to just Florida. And also they were pro-medicine universities. They had a robust medical system as well. And the faculty was nice enough to help me figure it out. I finished biomedical sciences with minors in public health, biomedical engineering, and business administration. I just didn't want to leave. And I finished all of that with honors. And then I used to commute back and forth during the summers. I would visit India. And by the time I came back in 2012, 13, and that was almost a decade of stay in the United States. In fact, Mera remembers that there was a program very specifically designed for selective students to represent the university in a country of their choice. And these students would go and work at an Education USA center, or so on and so forth. And that was the Global Ambassadors program. And Evelyn had designed it. And during that Global Ambassador program, I was the ambassador to India for 2005 and 2006 repeatedly. And it took off so well that when I came back, and I started working with the US consulate in Mumbai in the student section. At that same time, before I could join a doctor, before I could open a clinic, or before I could shadow somebody in a hospital, 4 or 5 things happened at the same time. Stand-up comedy happened. Kundan Shah, whom you mentioned, the late Kundan Shah, whom I assisted in direction, film direction. I joined a project with him. Theater started as well, local theater. I used to do local theater in Tampa, Florida as well. So always I had a happy balance, or my planner used to be extremely like full with events that were not just academic, but also had extracurricular activities in it. On campus, I was a senator. I was working with housing and residential education as a warden for a hostel that we had on campus. I used to write for the newspaper and write for the arts, so on and so forth. And that kept me active on and off campus. And it all fed into each other. And one of the classic examples of it is I did a series, which you mentioned, Lady Special. I did Lady Special earlier. And that was the dog. I played the role of a cardiac surgeon, and a lot of my education would help into the scripts because these script writers may not have that profound knowledge of medicine. So we would have those, and I sometimes correct them. I said, no, it's not that, it is this, and then it became quite real. Also, for example, when you look at theater, and we run theater clubs, we have theater organizations, and my experiences with student organizations on campus kind of helped me how to do that here. So that student leadership also sees its way right now in my present life as well. I run 2 nonprofits with children, and the basic thing is if they all feed into each other, then the aspect or then the ability to be multidimensional is very easy and beneficial because they all feed into each other. If you're doing 2 different things altogether, that's fine as long as it makes you happy. If you are into shares and stock market in the morning, but in the evening you like to sip coffee and write poetry, brilliant. It's a very rare combination, but if you'd like to do that, I think being multidimensional or being global, especially in today's day and age, is imperative.
Excellent, Ojas. By the way, lest the audience did not notice, Ojas is single. I'm sure
I am. Yes, I think that's I think that's the answer. That's the answer. How do you do all of this? How do you manage that? I was like, well, because you're single and you don't have to attend a whole lot of phone calls. You know what? Actually, I do have one insight that I missed, and I think it's I think befitting here as to why do some more roles in the same area. For example, as a writer, actor, director, it helps me a lot on set as well. For example, just give you one instance. If you have a bad script or a weaker script, and if you're a good writer, you can improve that. Not all actors can do that. They'll just probably just spit out whatever's written for them. If you're a good director also, then you will know your camera placements. Then you will know what angle will look best where. Similarly, if you're a good actor, then as a writer, you will know what that actor's strengths are, or what can be gotten, or what can be extracted from that artist that we have over there. So it feeds off of each other, and that symbiotic relationship between all of those roles within you is beneficial.
Okay. No, this is great, Ojas. So let me, sort of switch to something which is more central to this panel, which is basically entertainment beyond Bollywood.
Yeah.
And we would be very curious to hear how is it that you pivoted from Bollywood to more regional specific cinema and TV. So how did that transition come about?
In 2013, obviously, my initial training was in Bollywood. Like the first thing that I did when I came back from the United States to my home country was to get trained under Kundan Shah as his assistant. In fact, when many people or many artists come in and they land big roles or they land higher positions, they may not know the lower rungs of this ladder. And I always feel it's very important to learn all of that. The very first job that I had, I went and I met Kundan Shah through a reference. Kundan Shah, ladies and gentlemen, by the way, is a renowned renowned director in the Indian cinema and television space. And in the all-time top 10 films of India, his is on number 4, which is Jaane Bhi Do Yaro. And then came about, so Shah Rukh Khan is a popular name. So he pretty much groomed and trained and presented Shah Rukh to us through his television, like Circus, like Nukkad, Fauji, so on and so forth. So I got to train under him, who was an absolute tyrant. He was this very evil human being, a tyrant, no less. And I figured I've just come back from the United States. I've studied there. I've had some experience with theater over there as well. Then I probably will be like the 4th or 5th assistant, at least that. Little did I know, my first job was, he said, well, since you've not worked anywhere here before, your first job is to, I figured, because it started out like that, I figured it'd probably be the clapper, the one who has the clapboard. And we don't see clapboards anymore, but I thought I'd be the clapper boy. And he said, no. I went like 2 or 3 levels even lower than that. And I think my first job ever was, he said, you'll sit outside the office, not even inside the office. He said, you'll sit outside the office, and whoever comes to see me in the afternoon, you'll tell them I'm not in the office so that I can write peacefully. And I've had the great sadistic pleasure of saying no to so many legends who would come to see him, and I say he's not here. I was extremely offended, or even, I guess, taken aback, saying this cannot be my job. But then he was the one who held my hand and taught me every single thing. So from that office boy, I would sweep the office, I would make tea for him, and so on and so forth, and the guests that would come in later on, then became a clapper boy, then as a script assistant, then as a costume assistant, then as somebody who helped him in the camera and the shot division, and then as an assistant on the floor. So he trained me inside out as to how a film set functions. Whatever I know today of cinema is his teaching, or our learnings from that time. I was pushed to my limits, like you all probably have no idea, but it trained me no end. That helped me move. That helped me actually when I moved from Bollywood. So that was mainstream Bollywood. At the same time, a parallel cinema, regional cinema from the state of Gujarat was just having a revolutionary phase when they were just moving from an older orthodox kind of patterns of filming and just the same stories repeated to a different phase when you had urban cinema. So we had this new title in 2013 called Urban Gujarati Cinema. So urban cinema had better cameras. They had people from Bollywood coming in and also acting there. You would have newer techniques. You would have better locations. Stories were different. It wasn't just song and dance, what it used to be earlier. So then they were going through this transition phase. Me as an artist had the opportunity to either continue struggling in Bollywood solely, or also picking up that regional cinema, going beyond Bollywood, picking up that regional cinema, carving out a name for myself, and while also still struggling in Bollywood. But those films, those projects, those television shorts, those web series that I did in that regional space have definitely helped me here when I go audition in Bollywood, or when I even go meet somebody from the fraternity, because they see you in a different light. So that was one of the transitions. So moving away from Bollywood was a whole lot of things. One was the new age cinema that was coming up. The second was stand-up was picking up in India at that time, and people could get up on stage, and the idea of a single person with a microphone and making people laugh was coming off of age. We did have comedy earlier, folk comedy, which was basically sit-down comedy, not stand-up comedy. You would have 4 or 5 performers who would sit down and then speak. Somebody would do folk music, somebody would do comedy, so on and so forth. But solo shows of stand-up comedians in the, I guess, the textbook form of stand-up comedy was just coming off of age at that time, with many new troupes and groups forming at that time. And I joined one, which was the Comedy Factory, when we kind of started it together. And that also kind of took me a little away from Bollywood because that was coming up. And so was theater. Theater was always here. There was no new age theater, but that was one more thing which I was doing in Florida, and I wanted to continue because the teachings of theater are unparalleled. So that's how I kind of moved away from Bollywood. I do keep coming back and doing recurring stunts or stints. Sorry, not stunts. Recurring stints in Bollywood. The last was Rashmi Rocket, which was Tapsi Pannu's film about once again a regional topic from Gujarat, but in Bollywood. It was about a girl who ran competitive races while she was pregnant. And her story of how she ran that one race when she was pregnant. And it released, and I got to play a part in it. I was the sportscaster for her, who maps her journey. But yeah, so still connected to Bollywood, but extensively now working away from it because, well, those are main income sources.
No, thank you, Tejas. You mentioned something which I want to sort of maybe ask a little bit more about, which is, so Gujarati, there was like a bit of a tipping point for Gujarati cinema in 2013, as you mentioned, right? There was new technology, sort of a certain kind of template was being broken. And in India, if I think of regional cinema, there's a lot of variability around, if depending on which region you are making cinema from. So Telugu cinema, for example, is incredibly high budget. So high budget that Bollywood can't even dream to match up to Telugu cinema. Then, for example, during COVID, I know that there has been a resurgence of like new age Malayali cinema, for example. A lot of films that became famous all over India were Malayali films because they were the ones dealing with the subject of COVID front and center. So my question is basically, if you had to place Gujarat on the larger landscape of India and Gujarati cinema in the larger landscape of Indian cinema, like where does it fall into place? And how is it comparing to the other regional cinema traditions that India has had for such a long time?
From what I've gathered or what I've studied or explored in terms of regional cinema, if you separate Bollywood and just sequester it in one place, okay, that's mainstream. Bollywood, Hindi cinema, that's one. Then I think there are, the key players are three main regional ones. One, I would group the entire South together, which is known as the South industry, as they themselves also refer to when you speak to them from outside. But the South, which has Tamil, which has the Malayalam, Telugu cinema, all of those, that's one. They have been enjoying a successful cinema industry since, I guess, times unknown. We've had a lot of Southern actors and actresses who've then migrated to Bollywood, but they've always had a very strong presence on the cinema scene. Their films are high budget. You correctly mentioned their films are high budget. They also play a whole lot on, or as is stereotyped, on histrionics. There's not much physics sometimes involved in some of the films. Yeah, it's very loud, loud not just in terms of the sound design, but loud in terms of maybe costume, loud in terms of the message that was being sent, loud in terms of being loud and proud about adhering to their culture, adhering to those norms, adhering to very much the Southern traditions. So that's the South. Then you have Bengal, West Bengal, which is the Far East. And they are always pro-art, very heavy on literature, very heavy on poetry, very heavy on the writers that hail from that region. Obviously, Satyajit Ray and all of them who've made a name for themselves even in the Oscars. So then you have the Bengali industry, and then you have two other industries that came up almost parallelly. One is the Maharashtrian one, which is the Marathi cinema, and the other one was the Punjabi cinema, North. Those two were fledgling. Then there was a revolution Similar, a very similar revolution. New techniques came in, new cameras came in, new technicians came in. The edit became better, better music came in, and then the entire scene changed to an urban thing. So in terms of that, I think the Gujarati cinema, which I've extensively worked in now, continue to work in, is, I think, maybe still on the 4th or the 5th rank as of now. And we've just had the revolution that Marathi had maybe about 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I think we're still getting there. I think the fact that we're working with scripts now, earlier it was just a flood of just comedy. Like it's just give comedy, that's it. And then obviously it plateaus. You have comedy which becomes, and it's like, oh great, this is great, we can go and laugh. But then there comes a plateau of people like, oh, okay, fine, we're okay with like laughing in theaters and whatnot, but how about exploring other scripts? And then came about a time, I think about maybe just before the pandemic, when scripts that had to do with thrillers, murder mysteries, drama, psychological thrillers, those started being explored. And that was I think a very good and positive turning point in the Gujarati industry, in the urban industry recently. And I think it's still in that evolutionary phase right now. I don't think it'll ever be like there yet, but as long as they keep evolving, that's good. I think I missed a question while answering it, but make sure that
yes, of course. So there's one related question to what you just mentioned. So let me mention that. But this is by Priyank. And his question is, besides the budgetary constraints, which you often find when it comes to film production, what are the key differences for you between Bollywood and regional cinema? And let's focus on something like Gujarati cinema, because they can be.
Wrote an entire. There was an article about this. Somebody had asked because I've worked on both sides. But I think it's obviously the first one is the monies. A very basic Hindi film. In Indian rupees would probably be made in no less than, and this is just an average, in no less than about 5 to 6 crores. That's a small Hindi film. 5 crores is a small Hindi film, small Bollywood film. A Gujarati film or a regional film, especially in Gujarati at the moment, would be made in just 1 crore. So that there's that huge difference right there. It's 5 times as expensive to a Hindi film. The other differences that I see pretty much on set are you have larger crews in Hindi. On a Hindi film set, you would have about 120. On a Bollywood film set, you would have about anywhere between 100 to 150 people. Each department having about 10 people in costume, 10 people in makeup, 10 people in sound. Maybe you have 10 actors, 10 assistants in direction, and then you have associates, and then assistants, and then trainees, and you have interns, and so on and so forth. In Gujarati cinema, the entire set is probably about 50 people, about 3 to 4 people in every department, and that's about it. Because you don't need 10 assistants for costume. A team of 3 will be fine in costuming everybody, and that should be enough. You have 1 costume designer, you have the stylist, and maybe 1 assistant, and that's about it. And if you have the budget, then maybe somebody who is a pressman who can iron the clothes. So that's the difference you see. You also see the difference in professionalism to a certain extent. Bollywood is in Mumbai. That's Bombay, hence Bollywood. So Bollywood still adheres to those norms of a 12-hour shift. Oh, that's probably people don't know. But I'll post this as a quiz question, pop quiz. A normal shoot today for us is not an 8 to 5 or a 9 to 5 job. For us, it's a 12-hour shift. Earlier, it used to end at 5 or 6 in the evening, but now it's a 9 to 9, 2 to 2 or a 7 to 7. It's a 2 to 2 if you want to do half day shoot and half night shoot. It's a 7 to 7 if you want to catch that magic hour, the pink light that happens either at sunrise or at sunset. Or if it's a normal shift, it's a 9 to 9. So in those 12 hours of shooting, how many minutes of workable footage that go into the film are shot? Here's a pop quiz. You can answer it in the chat box. But coming back to the differences, yes, on a Bollywood film set, you will end at 9 o'clock or 8:30. But in regional cinema, they'll push the limits. Maybe we'll shoot till about 10 o'clock, or maybe we'll shoot till about 10:30 at the expense of everybody. But that professionalism is still maintained very much in Bollywood. In Bollywood, the other differences are also, I mean, in terms of professionalism, also in Bollywood, it's just a phone call away, and all the payments are made, very professionally in the different sections that they're divided into. Beginning the advance, during the shoot, the post shoot, and then after the dubbing. But in regional cinema, there have been times, I don't think there's a single artist in regional cinema who doesn't have money that's still out there that needs to be recovered. But these are the main differences that you see in the two. Otherwise, the technique is the same. You pretty much get the script, you rehearse, you block, the director blocks it, and then there is pretty much lights, camera, action.
Great. So there's a question by Dilip, and he says, well, I mean, it's a question that I'm sure a lot of people have on their mind, which is Bollywood is notorious for all kinds of things, amongst one of the things being nepotism. What is the, are there similar barriers to access in the regional film industry? And perhaps there can be like an added sub-question to this, which is how has the proliferation of OTT platforms influenced this landscape of employment?
I'm sorry, I couldn't get the second one. The second question.
How has the proliferation of OTT platforms changed the dynamics of breaking into these regional film
Wonderful,
industries?
Lovely questions. I'm so happy. So wonderful questions. That's good. Thank God I didn't. The Chitali was like, do you want to get the question? I was like, no, it kills the surprise.
Yeah, and the audience is doing a great job for me. So keep
I'm so proud of these questions. That there's 2 or 3 others which I will answer in succession.
I have them noted. Yeah.
Oh, you have them noted. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So does nepotism exist? Yes, it does. There's your answer. Yes, it does. But then again, it's everywhere. Like I'll give you an example. It's a bad example, but for example, you look at the casting couch. We're always, maligned as to there's so much casting couch that happens in cinema. I was like, well, it happens everywhere. It happens even in corporate realms. In fact, if you compare the two, for example, there's an actor or an actress who is being forced to do what she doesn't want to do or he doesn't want to do. They have the choice of saying no and letting go of that project. All they lose is probably a film or two, or maybe a project or two. But if you look at the corporate sector, if he or she requires that one signature on that dotted line from their bosses to get that promotion, for them saying no is going to be very tough. It's tougher, I think, tougher and more difficult than us. We can just say no and just let go of a project. But yes, nepotism does exist. Coming back to nepotism, it exists everywhere, but it also exists in the film industry. It may not be as dramatic or as histrionic as people put it, but as to yes, if there are barriers to people who've come in and they come. No, there's a whole list of people that have come in. In fact, if you look at the past 2.5 years of Bollywood, the so-called kings of Bollywood, in terms of actors, all of their films have sunk and not made the mark that it's supposed to, or their track record to match their track record. The newcomers, the young brigade of actors, have had successful films. They've had super hits. Some of them were author-backed roles. Some of them were performance-backed roles. And all those new actors have had great runs at the box office and have made their mark on cinema, on the minds of audiences. They've had their own fan followings, and I think a lot has to also do with what you correctly said is the advent of OTTs. The The beginning of virtual worlds of entertainment has shifted the focus from hero worship to content. We've moved away very much from just hero worship. Oh my God, it's Ojas Rawal. I have to go see that film. I mean, I would love for that to happen, but it's now come to, oh, Ojas is in that film which talks about surrogacy. Let's see that film or something like that. And more content-driven work was appreciated, especially during the lockdowns. It came about in, I think, the perfect time when people were just holed up and had nothing to do except, their phones, and a few other things, fortunately for some others. But that kind of brought about a very big change, almost a paradigm shift in the perception of viewers. If you are presenting a regional film or a Bollywood film that has to do with maybe flooding or ships or war or so on and so forth, people are not going to accept weak graphics. People are not going to appreciate haphazard work. They've seen Lord of the Rings. They've seen Game of Thrones. They've seen a whole lot of, these are just examples as to if they've seen that, then they're definitely going to compare, because your fight is going to be at the box office. If your film is there and it's competing with a regional film and it's competing with 2 or 3 films that came from Hollywood, they're probably going to spend that money, which they're going with maybe children and their spouses, and it's about a 3,000 rupee expense for an Indian family or a Mumbai family, I guess, to go watch a film, including food, travel for a family of 4. So it's a tough competition at the box office. So any quality compromise is not going to be accepted anymore. Fortunately, this has pushed people to push their limits to just make quality content. So nepotism has seen a decrease, I guess. Yes, it has. I guess the sterilized version of nepotism is that, well, if you start working in a group, if I've worked with Swayam and Chaitali, and they're wonderful actors on set, they're wonderful actors off set, and I have a really good camaraderie and a rapport with them, yes, I will offer them a film again. If I'm a good director and Mirav has produced my film, and if I've delivered my film and made profits for her, she is probably going to hire me again to direct a film. But if this happens continuously, I don't think there's a problem. But if it happens continuously at somebody else's expense, if there is malice involved, if there is systematic politics that is involved of removing people, if there is another actor, if we have Priyank, who has been given all of Swayam's roles just out of the blue after promises that were made, then there's a problem. Then there's something fishy. There's enough space for everybody to join Bollywood. There's not a problem of space. But if it has malice, if it has any ill intentions, then obviously that's the nepotism that we don't want. So, I think the second question to that was, is it easier to get into the regional film industry? Yes, it is, because there is less competition. The scale is lesser. And with a lesser scale, the number of spots versus the number of people applying for those spots, the competition is less. So it is easier to get into regional. Did I choose regional so that I could possibly get an advantage to get into Bollywood? Yes, of course. I was being offered work there. And if I get a platform over there to prove my abilities in direction or performance, then I'm going to do that so that I have those skills to present to anybody in Bollywood. Like, oh, here's my body of work, and tried and tested, proven. Then my audition or my case is probably going to be kept separate in a separate file. And that is why it is easier to get into regional. And the question that Swayam had added on, which I I guess, partly answered. The OTT platforms that came in, Netflix, Amazon, Prime, Z, so on and so forth, a whole list of platforms that have come about. And those gave an opportunity for films to release online. My film Dhummas, which is a murder mystery, released yesterday. So if you go to my Instagram, there's a picture of me with 2 gunshots and like bleeding hands and whatnot, which I just posted. That is from the film Dhummas. Whether I do die or not, for that you have to watch the film. But that film was the first film to release post the pandemic. And it was released online. It was released on Amazon Prime. And it saw a theatrical release yesterday. But the fact that it ran so successfully online has helped spread the word to friends and family of those viewers that, oh, we'll wait and go to the theaters when it releases eventually. But it has given a platform for those people to sell off their films. Maybe they don't have the budgets for a theatrical release. Maybe they don't have a budget for a pan-India release. Maybe they don't have a budget for an international release, which involves a lot of people, which involves distributors, which involves line producers who can help you with it. But just dealing with an online platform gives you the direct access to the homes of somebody that is sitting either in Ahmedabad or somebody that is sitting in Los Angeles. A direct online. It was, I think, the YouTube for cinema, where people could watch it online. So that it's been a blessing in disguise for OTTs to kind of rise in this time. It has also taken away from the feel, taken away from the idea of sitting in the cinema house and in a cinema hall and watching the film. But one must evolve. One must evolve, an industry must evolve to the demands of the customers and the consumers of that particular time. I'll just so answer 2 other questions that we had.
So the one by Chaitali, I think, is an interesting follow-up, which is that even in OTT platforms, you do have constrained advertising budgets, right? So like, how do you publicize your work? I mean, Bollywood spends so much money on advertising their film. What do you do?
Am I visible?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because I have the chat box up. So I was wondering if the chat box is up and then I can't be visible. But yes, Bollywood spends a bomb on promotion, on sending the message out that the film is coming. They go to lengths, they go to, but it's also just that fortnight before the film releases. You'll see hoardings, you will see television ads, you will see print media also with their share of newspaper cuttings or newspaper ads, magazine ads, flyers, so on and so forth. You'll also see a huge budget for radio promotion, and the main star cast will possibly go and visit all of them in the network wherever they go. They also go on city tours. With regional, it's just the same thing, but the scale is lesser. If you look at regional cinema, if my regional cinema, which is a Gujarati film, Dhummas is not in Hindi, so I will want to promote Dhummas in areas where there are Gujaratis, because it is going to be in those theaters that are near them. There's no point in me promoting Dhummas in Belgaum, because there's obviously no cinema house that is going to be running that film. If it's the same thing that we do in regional cinema as well, Chapani. We do radio visits, we do city tours, we target festivals so that we get a mass promotion at that same time. There is a whole lot of social media influence also, although I have always doubted how much of social media likes, how much of social media views converts into a box office viewership. I've always doubted that. But I do know that a particular hammering of social media has had an impact, a positive impact on OTT films. If I watch an ad for Dhummas on my phone, and it ends with saying, oh, film also available on Prime Video, I will possibly mark or bookmark it, or mark that I will watch that film tonight, because it's the ease of access. You have the film available on your phone or on your laptops or on your home theater systems. But if the film is somewhere out there and you have to go buy a ticket and then go out, especially in these COVID norms, and people maybe don't want to step out wearing masks and sit separately, leaving one seat between the family, and they want to watch it from the luxury of their homes, then they will do that. So promotion, online promotion, I think is good for online films. I don't think online promotion helps in ground promotion. Ground promotion will convert into box office sales. That I do know. If you go to a particular village and then you or a smaller town, and then there's one single screen theater and then you promote, yes, people will still go and watch it. What we also do is promotion after the film is released. I think it's very important to do that, and I've always encouraged my producers and makers to look into that as well, where once the film is running, once the film ends, we have, let's say there's a 9 o'clock show, 9 p.m. show. The film ends at, let's say, 11 o'clock. I have gone with a whole lot of my star cast for the past films to those shows and then interacted with people. For them to see somebody in flesh and blood, in just a normal avatar, as opposed to what they saw in the film, is a kick of a different kind. Yes, then the autographs and the selfies follow. But for them to do that is definitely going to go back home and be spread across their WhatsApp groups, across their family, across their friends. And that has had a good impact. We've done that for films in the past, and theater visits is what we call them. Theater visits also help. And I mean, I've done theater visits as if there's an entire list of shows that were about 15 minutes apart each. And I've traveled all of Bombay, just run from one show to another, and just delivered that same pitch again and again and again. That please do spread the word about it to friends and family. And that has helped. So those are the promotional budgets for maybe a regional film. It's just the same scale as opposed to, let's say, if a Hindi film, which is made of 5 crores, spends maybe about 1 crore on promotions or even more. A Gujarati film or a regional film made for 1 crore probably just spends 20 lakhs separately for promotions. I think we missed one question out of that.
We missed several.
Get back to we have like so many questions like that. Yes, I'll try to keep them short now.
But I do want to, go to you as an actor, right, and ask a couple of questions related to that, which is actually there in the chat. So Sandeep has asked,
okay,
did any actor or actress inspire you to take up your journey? Can you think of anybody specific?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, definitely. Most definitely. I think I consider, or I think I almost worship and revere Robin Williams, the late Robin Williams, because he reassured the artist within me that different roles could be portrayed as an actor while also still being a stand-up comedian. You can give good riveting performances in drama while still being a stand-up comedian as the other job. So Robin Williams definitely is one of them. Meryl Streep, goddess of acting. So there's not one. These are from, obviously, and I mean the list is extensive. But if you look at Hindi cinema, then there is Balraj Sahni from the yesteryears. You have Ashutosh Rana, Manoj Bajpayee in the newer batch, and if you look at Gujarati, then actors like Arvind Pandya, Dharmendra Gohil. These are actors and actresses who continued to inspire me, and they still do. And it's not just those who've established themselves greatly. And this has happened in the past. I was working, shooting an ad for the government on the mask policy during the lockdown. I was shooting that so that people would continue. This was our first Diwali, and we were making an ad to discourage people from celebrating Diwali without masks or without any precautions. So we were trying to promote, yes, celebrate Diwali, that's fine, but also be very careful about health and public health. So there was a small little girl who played my daughter, and the finesse that she had, the absolute beast that she was in terms of acting, that inspired me. So I draw inspiration from, I mean, from people who've done their work before, or newer ones as well.
Yeah, that's lovely, Ojas. So there's one more question by Bilwa, which is there an inherent trade-off between following your academic versus creative instincts, and how do you find the discipline to balance them both?
Good question. I don't think I've had the concrete answer to that yet, but yes, I think there is as I kind of answered earlier, if they all feed into each other, then it's truly interdisciplinary and beneficial. But yes, there is an academic versus creative. I mean, following your academic versus creative interests, there is a trade-off, yes, and it was a definite conscious choice, yes. But I did have my academic background as a backup, which was concrete and solid enough. I respect and admire those actors who don't have that and completely take the plunge without a safety net at the bottom. I do have that safety net. I've been blessed to have that safety net because of my education, because of my degree, because of my achievements. But those actors who do not have that, and this is just the one thing that is their bread and butter, and have to run around from pillar to post just to make sure that they get that one audition in. Yes, I think I respect and admire that. But I took, I guess, an insurance of kinds. Do I miss my academic pursuits? Yes, I miss surgery very much. I miss psychiatry very much. But the fact that any single work day is not burdensome, is not tiring me, is good enough for me. If my shoot shift ends at 9 o'clock or 9 to 9, so 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. shoot shift ends at maybe 11, I'm still not complaining. I mean, I may be, cribbing about, oh, it's a long shift or whatnot, because I have to come back at 9 in the morning, but it's still not cumbersome. It's not burdensome. It's not tiring. It's not as mentally and psychologically taxing as it could be if I was doing what I was not enjoying that much at that point of time. So it was a big decision. Yes, it was. I think it was just a big decision as much as when I moved from comedy to serious acting, to pure drama, whether the people will accept me or not. And this is a field where people will tell you within a project or two whether you work or not on screen. If you're not, there is truckloads of hate mail that come in. So yeah, but it helped to get that reassurance from audiences. And the second question was, how do you find the discipline to balance both? I'm not very. I think it comes down to time management. I love interacting with students. I love doing these such sessions. In fact, I just did one in Amrut Modi School of Management at Ahmedabad University last week. And this is the season of student festivals or college festivals in India right now. These 2 months especially, and I'm probably going to be doing a total, including yours, about 12 to 15 of these. So I like these very much. It keeps my mind fresh to do this, to work with the nonprofits that I have, to go live at night and just chit chat with people. Mirav has been there quite a few times in my late night Instagram lives. It's just as fulfilling to me to read a script and prepare for an audition as it would be for me to take care of my garden right behind this. I think I enjoy very much all of those little things, and stringing them together is, I think, the key, without having an overburden of it. So I think that's I think how you manage. I think it's just time management and prioritizing. Obviously, prioritizing what you want to do and what needs to be done. So that's more important in that sequence.
By the way, Ojas,
Yes,
if it is fine with you, can we extend this by 5 more minutes? Because we have a couple more questions in the
most
chat.
certainly,
And
absolutely.
okay,
I
excellent.
wouldn't miss such an audience. I wouldn't miss such an August gathering for anything.
Okay, so there's one question
Oh,
by Poonam,
yes.
which is, what are your thoughts on direct-to-home releases and the monopoly of multiplexes? How will that have a potential to democratize filmmaking? So multiplexes versus direct-to-home releases.
Could you just repeat that question, please?
Sure. What are your thoughts on direct-to-home releases and the monopoly of multiplexes? How will that have a potential to democratize filmmaking?
The direct-to-home releases has definitely had a very big impact and has made a huge dent in terms of ticket sales, in terms of box office sales, in terms of releases, a film release, like a theatrical release. That has had a huge impact, which is also why pretty much every cinema, be it regional or Bollywood or Hollywood, has understood that, yes, we also need to consider the online release as something. We would jingoistically still want to believe that cinema has ma in it, so it is the mother after all, and people will want to always go and get that experience of watching a film in the theaters. We would want to believe that, and we would want to hypnotize ourselves with that idea, but the reality remains that what is the worth of public libraries now? Not much. Similarly is going to be probably the state of cinema halls. But does that mean that Barnes and Nobles will shut down? No. We still have Barnes and Nobles spread all across the US. This is just an example. I love going to Barnes and Nobles, which is why I mentioned it. So you still have that. So there will always be the presence of theaters, yes, multiplexes, because the idea of going and watching film, going and watching movies, going to the movies, that very phrase still has a romance of sorts. The attraction of, the fascination of, the magnetic effect of going to the movies. I think all of us remember going to the movies, be it while we were students and movie hopping. You can edit that part out. Or going to the movies with your family. If I were to ask, I still remember my very first movie. I'm sure all of us should remember the very first movie that they went to. Going to the movies is an experience. Watching the film on the direct-to-home, either dish TV or whatever you may have, will never compare to that experience. You still find, yes, you may be comfortable in your bed with a huge bucket of popcorn, but it will always remain. Cinema is always here to stay, but it will have to make way. It will have to give space to the individualistic nature of direct-to-home releases, where in one household, grandpa could be watching his film in his room, the kids are watching a cartoon film in their room, while the parents are watching some other series in their room. Cinema will have to deal with this. It's just like what happened with television, with the advent of television, the advent of radio. So I think it'll be very interesting to watch what new things theaters will offer to continue bringing in that crowd.
Great, Oja. So one question by Amitesh, which is, again, so since we spoke about the past of the regional cinema and the present. Now we go to the future. So what do you think is the future of Indian cinema? And I mean, let me because there is a shift, as you mentioned, from like music and dancing to content, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not hero worship anymore. It is more the things that you are producing. And what are your hopes for Indian cinema for the future? Like where would you like the trajectory to go?
I am ecstatic. I am stoked beyond compare to be working in such a transition phase of cinema. I'm just so proud to be at the right place at the right time to witness, not just witness, but be a part of such a phase where you see this transition, this moving away from just faces or bodies to content, to stories, to tales that need to be told, to entertainment. And not just that one comedy can be entertainment. No, as we say, Navarasa, the 9 rasas that are part of theatre or part of art. Sorry, we will still have song and dance, but not every film will have song and dance. There will be films that will not need song and dance. There will be more films that will be very content heavy and still appreciated. A very personal example of that, especially if you look at regional, not what I just said was of pan-Indian cinema altogether. But if you look at regional cinema, I don't remember buying a ticket and going to watch Gujarati films or regional films when I was growing up. I mean, you didn't even have those films running here in Mumbai or Bombay way back when. We didn't have those films here, but now we're making films. I work in regional cinema where school students, college students are buying tickets and watching films in their own mother tongue. And that's something that I'm very proud of. And I think the future is very bright. I'm more than certain that if we continue producing good content, if we continue not compromising on quality, even though if it is forced upon us that, oh, well, now the audience is very informed. Now the audience has been exposed to great content from the West. They've been exposed. I've come across, let me share this one experience. I was shooting in a very remote location outside of Gujarat, outside of Junagadh in Gujarat, where I had gone to shoot for my very first web series. And Swayam, let me tell you what that story was in just one line. It was the story of a young man who refuses to step out of the toxic relationship between him and his ex-girlfriend, who is now married. Now, this was void of any comedy. This was completely, this is drama. This is psychology. This is psychiatry. And that particular film, I immediately said yes to that thing. I said, this is brilliant. And it's a story about him, this ex-girlfriend of his who is now married to somebody else, and his mother who tries to tell him that you need to move on. Relationships evolve, relationships end, new relationships begin. But such concepts in such remote villages and such acceptance was fascinating. When I went to that village to shoot, I came across 3 to 4 groups, not just people, 3 to 4 groups of people. So these are about 20, 25 people with an average age of about 22 years. I think the average young person in that team, boys and girls, was just 21 or 22. And they spoke to me about how great Korean cinema is, how great Japanese cinema is, what films like from the Far East look like, or what kind of takings they have, what kind of color palettes they use, what kind of costuming they use, what kind of scripts they look at. And I was so impressed that if just because of the OTT platforms, just because of the release from released at home, or the digital releases, so to say, has had such a great far-reaching impact on people in the corners, which has nothing to do with how great their creativity is. They just happen to come from a town that may not be a premier town, that may not be a first-tier town, but because of their exposure to those things, they were applying all of that knowledge to our film shoot. And I was so happy that they were using that world knowledge of cinema to our project. So I think it's a bright future. I think it's the time to be here. I think it's the time to for you guys to sit back, take the popcorn, and just watch, and for us to continue working and exploring.
This is really exciting, Ojas. Thank you for this really burst of excitement that you just provided us. And you really seem to be on the frontier of, this vastly complex, evolving, dynamic Indian cinema.
I'm trying to be at every single place.
Great. And you mentioned
theater, television, film.
You mentioned Dhumas, which is recently releasing or has released. What else is in the pipeline? Like, tell us more of what you're working on. Just a brief snapshot, and then we'll be done. We will not keep you awake any longer.
No, I don't want to be that. Wait, okay, just general statement in public interest. If any questions are left, we'll officially still stick around. I don't know till what time they have the recording button on, but I'll stick around. And if you still feel shy and you don't want to ask it out here, because no questions are silly questions, you could just privately send me the question and I will try to answer it on Instagram as well. But so 1 second, let me just see if I've we do have some questions, but let me answer this one. What to look forward to things are there are about fortunately or unfortunately, during the lockdown, between the lockdowns, there was one. India had two big waves of darned COVID, but between them we had one unlock, and in that unlock phase, the maverick that I have decided to be, I did about 16 projects, one of which was Dhumas, and all of those are ready and just ready to release. When they will release, I don't know, because India is out of it. I think India is also gradually coming out of Omicron. Nice enough. We are at 50% capacity right now in theaters and in cinema halls. So plays and films are just seeing half an audience right now. So no producers are willing to come forward and release their films in such critical times, so that because they will have to work harder, or they will it's not viable for them to get a recovery or a profit in such a time. So the economics of recovering from a film are a little hazy at the moment. So none of those are releasing, but what is there to come, I will just brief you. In terms of films, there are about 6 to 7 films that are coming up. I think that 2 or 3 that I'm really proud of. There is one called Nayika Devi. Nayika Devi is a period drama. It is a historic drama where I am in complete armor, on horseback, in costume, and in war. I would rarely ever find an opportunity to do something like this, but lo and behold, we have a script that was found about a warrior princess who fought back the invasion from the Middle East that was coming into India at that time. And these pages were either torn from the history books or just buried under dust. And we had a maker that came about, and they wanted to do this film. In fact, they were like, well, this is a female-centric film. There's not much for you to do in it. I said, I know where this film is going to go. I know how far-reaching the message of this film is, and that's why I want to be a part of it. So they cast me in the film. It was a brilliant shoot, and you'll see me in complete war gear and armor as a king in her empire. She rules an empire, and I happen to be one of the kings in her various kingdoms. So that's Nayika Devi that is coming up. We have other films like Valam Jaune. Valam Jaune is a comic film where it's about a relationship between a boy and a girl. The boy doesn't want to be with that girl. The girl keeps threatening him with suicide. That if you leave me, I will come. It's a very comic take on a girl who just does not want to exit his life, and so on. So that's a comic caper that's coming up. It's a multicast film, and then there is since we were talking about films that have to do with content. So I did a film which had to do with, I wouldn't know if it's paranormal activity or the third realm or the fourth dimension.
Yeah.
It has to do with, there's a film where the actress dies in the first, I think, 13th or the 14th minute. And then we go try to dispose of the body far in a forest. We bury the body. We come back. When we're driving back, we hit somebody on the road, and it's that same girl. So she keeps coming back, and this is a paranormal film. It deals with births, it deals with death, it deals with these things, and I'm very excited because we could work on a film like that, and it's turned out very well. So those will be coming in terms of film. That's just what film has. Television, I may be returning to television just next. In fact, I'm headed next week to Lithuania to shoot the second half of a film that I just started, which was Hutari Hi, it is a romantic film. I happen to play the anti-hero. I happen to play a very abusive husband in the film. But we're shooting the second half of it in Lithuania in, I think, -8 or -9 degrees in snow. I might be returning to television once I come back to India. That's a daily sitcom. When you do television, you have to give up everything else. But what I do is my policy is to finish about 6 to 7 films and then just stay put in terms of cinema, and then I go back to television, and then I do television while these films keep releasing one after the other. It sees me through the year. So my presence on the screen is also maintained while at the box office as well. So I'll go back to television, and if everything goes well and if the doors open up, I will be touring the United States with my play. So if all goes well, I might be coming to cities near you with a play in the summer.
Ojas, what is the name of the play?
We were yet to title it. We're yet to title it.
Okay.
It's a comedy. It's definitely a comedy.
Okay.
But we're yet to title it. And if you follow me on Instagram or wherever on social media, please let us know when you're here. We would love to host you. Thank you very much. I promise that I will come see you guys.
Well, thank you, Ojas. You really are the jack of all trades, master of some, as you put it in the beginning. And please, everybody, it was lovely to have you. It was really a masterclass. And everybody, please give a virtual round of applause to Ojas.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. If I've missed out on questions, I will, once we shut the recording, I'll go back to those questions and figure them out. If at all there is ever a sequel, I think that's the right word, a sequel to this talk, you just let me know a little bit in advance, and then we'll cover those questions in that second one.
For sure, just thank you for joining us today. We loved your energy and everything that you shared with us today. I think we now understand entertainment beyond Bollywood a lot better. And thank you for being with us here today. I'm sure our audience members still have a lot of questions, and they'll probably reach out to you. I mean, we are concluding a conference for today, for this year, in fact, and I'm sure people will want to hear more from you, and they will reach out. But we are hoping for a similar conference next year, and maybe the new board will reach out to you again. And I'm sure you would have done a lot of more work outside Bollywood by that time, or maybe in Bollywood too, and we'd love to hear that as well. So
I'll come by, as I said, you very beautifully invited me to come see you guys. So when I come there, I will sign the MOU for next year, so that my presence is cemented.
Yes, of course. And thank you, Swayam. This was wonderful. Thank you for moderating.
Thank you, Swayam. Wonderfully moderated.
Thank you, Ojas.
And thank you to all our audience members. with this, we conclude our conference. Thank you for being with us and supporting us throughout our journey. Thank you, everyone.